Welcome to another episode of the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kramer. I have Neil with us. We're going to get deep into your product, your legacy. We're gonna talk about things that are not so fluffy, right, Neil?
I hope so.
More tactical, more practical, like let's actually create some financial success. And you know what I love about you, Neil, is that you do it in a way that you honor your other values as well. You're a family man, you're a great dad. You are proving that you can be successful, you can create wealth for yourself, and you can do it on your terms. You can do it in a way that you feel in integrity. You feel good about yourself. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about it. We call it my five F's.
Well, let's get into those five F's.
One of them is
Let's
not what you think. That sounds like a BuzzFeed hook.
let's start with a little bit of a background about your business so our listeners have a frame of reference
Yeah.
for what it is that you do.
Last 11 years or so, I've been really focused on brand building in the physical product space. It's been a big component of my life for a while, operating on multiple platforms, starting on Amazon, FBA, and others. Prior to that, I was in management consulting and lead generation. I had a team of high-end management consultants flying around the country, high billable hours and senior management positions. But I also got very good at the lead gen and affiliate marketing side. So I was actually driving traffic and leads and cost per install on mobile phones, that where we were driving traffic before the meta interfaces and YouTube interfaces even allowed you to do it online. We were doing it through spreadsheets. So I'm going to get old school for a sec. But 17 years ago, I started my company by firing the man. I left my IBM career at the pivot of a very critical point at which I can continue on into seniors and go after partnership and do that kind of stuff, or get moved to Argentina or take early retirement. Those are fun choices, right? But as it turned out, I had asked a lovely young lady to marry me that year in March of 2007, and she'd said yes. So I was thinking more family orientation and less career orientation and trying to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up. And when she said yes, that kind of changed the game. And by June, IBM was like, make your choice. And so I made early retirement my choice, and I burned the boats. I didn't burn any bridges because that's not how you should do business, but I burned the boats and said I'm never going back ever again to any corporate or W-2 or type of job. And I have been able to do that by God's good blessings, even in major troubles. Who is not in business in major troubles? I like to joke that if you haven't been really serious about business, you've probably never been sued and you're not really serious about business. If you haven't been on the verge of bankruptcy or been bankrupt at least once in business, you probably weren't trying hard enough. If you're not willing to risk it all for the reward of purpose and value, you probably haven't tried hard enough. So I'm going to challenge some of the core beliefs and myths that people maybe aren't willing to say to each other because it's the truth, right? Business is hard. It's not for everybody. Being an entrepreneur and a solopreneur is one thing. Being self-employed and a business owner is something different. And being a business owner who becomes a business investor is very different. And everybody wants to jump to becoming a business investor like they want, 19-year-old life coaches online with blue checks to be your, mentor. At the end of the day, you got to go through the execution to get the experience, to get the wisdom. You can't just jump straight to the wisdom, right? And so by that process, I'm hoping here today, somebody listening to this will glean something very important out of this entire call. This probably you're not doing enough and you're not risking enough to do it. And that's going to be my challenge for everybody listening to this today.
So for some people listening, that's an ouch.
Well, I hope it is.
Other people listening are like, it's spot on.
I get it. What do I risk though?
Yeah. Let's
Where
talk
do
a
I put
little
it?
bit about that because in our current culture, we'll say,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of snippets of inspirational statements and clichés.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people think they know what those things mean, but it's not until you've actually like gone through the real school of business hard knocks that you really get it. And you know that it's an oversimplification. So there are people listening who they're all in, they're committed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe been in business for many, many years, and maybe they
Mm-hmm.
want to take it to that next level, or maybe they're at a point where they're like, I'm in as an entrepreneur. It's in my blood, it's in my DNA. But this particular business, something about it just isn't clicking. It's not it's not right. Something about it's off. So from all of your experience, I'd love to shed a little bit more light on what it actually means. What do you mean about doing the right things? And what does it mean to really be all in? So I think this is probably going to
What
be
does it
deep.
mean to be all
Everybody buckle up.
in? Well, what does it mean to be all in? So in that, for me, it was what was I, willing to gain? What was I willing to risk to keep what I was willing to gain? As I formed my thought processes a little bit during that transition in 2007, and I was trying to think about how I wanted to do this business. We found out we were pregnant with our first child. In the same year I left and started a business and got married, we also got pregnant that year. So, that it is a cliche to some effect that people, want to wait and to start a business so they have the money, the time, or the purpose. And then the others will say in the cliche world of the hopium, online Instagrams that, well, it's never a right time to start your business. And there's actually truth to that one. Because if I had looked back and said, well, was this the easiest, best way to do this? I would have learned very quickly that no, it was extremely difficult. The outcome was understanding that I was willing to do something others weren't. So we ended up selling the home we had built, a custom home. We ended up getting rid of some car debt, and we did something that I think a lot of people weren't willing to do at that point in the startup component. And we'll get to the other part, which was wait long enough to make sure that it would work, right? Give it enough time to make it work. And what I learned in that process and continued to learn in business and continued to learn by ups and downs in business was every opportunity comes with a new level of risk. And the question is, are you willing to test to find out that you can make that risk occur? Or are you going to just say, well, I need a guarantee. It must be known that if I spend this money and do this thing, it's going to work out. And what you're actually doing is putting requirements on the business as opposed to letting the business build its requirements of you. So you are actually the restriction of the business growth. You're a restriction of the business opportunity. You're probably restricting your ability to drive more purpose and value. And you're probably restricting your ability to gain more profits. And having risked enough to have gone bankrupt once, I can tell you, you haven't pushed the boundary enough, right? You haven't pushed it far enough to find out what you're willing to do, what you're capable of doing, and how you can pivot, okay? Be agile and figure it out. What you've been doing is sitting over here, yelling at the river and trying to coax it to move towards you, but you're not willing to walk out into the river, right? Because many of you think, well, if I walk out on the river, I better be walking on top of that river because I'm not going to be underneath it. And like, wow, that's pretty arrogant. So when I see that occur with certain business owners, the first thing they got to do is break down their scarcity and limiting beliefs and get to turning into a real abundance mindset. It means that I'm going to test and pivot 5 times on a marketing campaign until I figure out how it works, because marketing is just an activity of sales, and there's no guarantee that anything I market is going to work until I see it working. So I'm going to take that action. I'm going to execute, gain the experience, and dial in that marketing activity, whatever it is. I don't see small business owners in most cases doing that. They're usually limiting their beliefs, probably, and I see this in many times, because they don't actually really understand where the business goes or can go, and they have certain limiting beliefs they're putting on it. So they're not willing to do what it takes to get it done. They're lowering their opportunity cost, and they don't realize it. Well, Neil, I can't just spend $10,000 on a marketing campaign. And I would say, well, somebody else is willing to do it, right? Your competitor's probably willing to do it. If you're not willing to try it, somebody else is willing to try it. Well, Neil, I just don't know which activity I should be doing. I don't know which marketing thing. I don't know if I should be running ads on this or updating my website or blah, blah, blah. And I would say it's because you're not focused. You haven't prioritized. You're actually a bit chaotic. You need to sit down and think about the things you should be doing that have been working, and only focus down on the things that are working and do more of those, because now you've gone a little too wide and didn't focus on what you should actually be doing every day, week, and month to make it go. Well, I don't have those skill sets. I don't know how to run paid traffic. I don't know who to trust. I don't know what to do. And I would say the average expert spends 18 minutes a day learning something for 12 months that they can master. If you're not willing to do that, you're not going to master one of those activities that makes you better in business. And the other component is, you and I have learned over time and experience, Alicia, that we can't do it all. My strengths and weaknesses mean that I need to realize there are things I can't and should not be doing because it is not my bent or my gift. And many small business owners are not willing to hire out just regular bookkeepers or accountants to take care of finances because they feel like they got to handle themselves because it's not a justifiable expense. And I would say, well, you're probably missing a whole opportunity to spend more time on your marketing. You're obviously not taking advantage of most tax and loopholes if you're not willing to pay somebody to do that. And you got to pay the right people to take advantage of that. So we're not paying more money to the United States than we have to. So we can keep more money and deploy it into our business. So you're not actually willing to do the things that real business owners are willing to do. And that's a risk. And that comes back to limiting and scarcity beliefs. Always does, every time. Regardless of what platform or product or non-product or service-based business, it always comes back to the same thing.
Those deep-rooted limiting beliefs. Obviously, that's what I specialize in. So I can tell you they're abundant.
Oh,
And
they are. They're in today's market, it's easier to be that way.
mhm,
Why? Because everybody's commiserating. See, I don't commiserate. I don't like it. I don't want to be around it. I teach my 4 daughters that misery loves company, so stop commiserating. Nobody is terribly concerned in the world about your complaints. Your mom and dad are, right? And very few people in the world will consider your complaints to be something they want to solve. The rest of the world will just latch on to that. You'll commiserate, and pretty soon they call it misery loves company for a reason, because you will surround yourself by people who love misery. And that will create more limiting and scarce beliefs. And if you're looking into your peer group, if you're looking into your business, if you're looking into your network and you're seeing that and you're not changing it, that's one of the first things you can do today. Okay. Some relationships are meant to be there for a short time, right? The mountains you carry right now are the ones you were supposed to climb. So if you're not out making that change today, tomorrow, every week, every day, 18 minutes a day, you're never going to get anywhere, right? You can't just get off the couch and start running a marathon. But I ran a marathon last year, more than like 10 times. You know why? Because I would walk 10,000 steps a day. And with that, I ran more than one marathon in the last year, but I did it every day. And you got to get out of the world. Like, I shut off all the world news. I shut off the world information. I get it from select locations. I turned off the television stuff. We only watch things that are on demand. I got out of the idea that scarcity and a mindset and even the drone crap and stuff that's happening right now is anything that I can even impact. So why am I going to stress over it? Why am I going to focus on it? Why am I going to commiserate in that conversation? Well, inflation is up. Okay, fine. Change your prices. Well, scarcity is there. Okay, find other products that are more in demand. Okay, well, nobody's buying right now. Well, that's not actually true. You're saying limiting belief. Plenty of people are buying. There's trillions of dollars moving in the market. What it means is money is just not moving next to you right now. Doesn't mean it's not moving. It's just not near you. Once again, river and you. Okay, you're still coaxing and saying limiting belief statements. Okay, and you're creating those limiting belief statements and then commiserating them with other people, and that has to stop. If you stop doing that today, every day, next week, and over a course of a month, you will find so much changes. So many people will be attracted. The wrong people will be repelled by what you're saying. You will have changed so much about your business. And the focus and clarity that comes out of that is hard to explain on a simple phone call like this. But once you take that action, the clarity and focus will come out, right? We challenge people in our world to come up with 500 products in 21 days. And you should see the new heads explode when we tell them that's their first challenge, right? Their heads go, poof. They're like, what? It's not possible. And then we show them how to do it. And then they realize it is completely possible. And they start to have fun with it. And I think that's the other aspect for me. One of the 5 F's, right, is family and fun, freedom and finances, faith. Okay. All of those things. You're a business owner, you're operating on faith, like it or not.
you made some really powerful points, and I'd love to go deeper on those, but there's something else that I really want to make sure we touch on.
Okay.
And that's the pivoting and
Yep.
the product side.
Mm.
So I know there are people listening who they feel like they're on the cusp of a change. Something's got to change.
Mm-hmm.
Do have the drive. They are, they're listening to the right mentors. They're cutting out the news. They're working on their inner game. And it's just a matter then of sort of pivoting and clicking into the right product, the right service, the right business. So I want to talk about that with you
Mm.
because you're an expert in this area, and I don't I don't often have experts in this area. So I really want to lean into this because I know that you could probably drop a couple of nuggets that might open some people up mentally to new possibilities. So where do you start with people when they're
Mm.
in that place where they're like, Neil, I'm ready for a change. Where do I go from here?
Every change goes through a phase of what we call an emotional cycle of change. Okay. What you need to determine is where you are willing to risk change for you, whatever business or service or thing. If you're willing to try a new offer, if you're willing to launch a new product, if you're willing to change and pivot on something to see if it works, you have to be willing to accept that it might fail in that process and that you're going to have to pivot through that failure. If you are willing to fail up, then it's just a matter of time, whether it's 3 times or 30 times or 3,300 times. You're going to have to be willing to fail, fail, fail until you figure out how you do it for your customer and your offer and your business and your product, whether it's physical or tangible, service related or consulting related. You need to determine, not out of the word desperation, which was what came to mind when I was hearing you speak just now about the question. Desperation leads to sales that are desperate, leads to I have a fear that everything is going to come to an end, when in reality, it's probably not if you don't create it, right? If you don't create that failure. So we brought this up on a call yesterday during our live call. We have these calls every Wednesday. We get on our community. We talk for like 2 hours straight live about everything that's happening and questions. And since it was the end of the year, we're not having one at this time at the end of the year because it's going into the new year at the time we're recording this. The question for each of the coaches was to come on and say, what are you looking forward to next year? And what is one piece of advice you'd give for everybody to focus on? And, mine was feel the fear and do it anyways. Feel the fear and do it anyways. Well, what if it fails? I don't care. Do it again. Well, what if it doesn't work out? I don't do it again. Well, what if I don't make all the money? Well, what if nobody wants the offer, right? Well, what if they launch that product and it doesn't make those new sales? Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. We get older. I think it's in some ways in our mind, and we get the feeling that we have to be entrenched or we need to be at some location or we see other people. And so we have to be there. And instead of just being okay where we are, we always have to kind of compare ourselves to everybody else and say, where are we at? Where are we at? And that creates more symptoms of fear in our minds. And then we start locking in and we create new fears in this little echo chamber between our ears that probably don't exist, but we created them to justify our lack of action or to justify the actions we think we want to do next. If you can shut all that noise down and get out of your own way, there's success literally on the other side of it. And it could be trying that new offer at a new price point, right? You might find, okay, there's a guy the other day, he came in and he was like, did you see this newsletter I post? I didn't see it. And he said, here, take a look at this. And it was a quick story about a guy who tried to, he was talking about the psychology of the buyer. It was a business related thing, but he was trying to actually get rid of a couch. And so he put it for free on Marketplace. And guess what happened? It sat there for weeks and nobody would come take a free couch. But he put a $150 price point on it, had 2 offers the next day, and someone came and picked it up on their own dime. So the value of what you're creating has value to somebody else if you can dial in what that value is. And many times people think it's lowering their prices, but I would actually challenge you to raise your price. By raising your price, you increase your profitability. By increasing your profitability, you have the ability to market to more of those people. And there is a market for every person, from the $99 purse buyers to the $1,000+ product purse buyers. Again, just because they're not available to you right now, it does not mean they're not available. Right. And that's, I think, where so many people don't understand that feel the fear and do it anyway statement has to do with overcoming your own fear that it isn't going to work, the fear of failure. When I launched my first marketing campaign online, it was from a little Sprint dial-up card in the middle of the country where we were hanging out in a remote location where I had chosen to be more with my family than stay in the business. And so as we sold our house and downsized and got to a place to create that longevity, there was, purpose and value that was always going to be driven by staying with my family, like staying with them no matter what. Over the course of this business, I was going to ensure that they were with me and just everything I could do all the time as much as possible. That included homeschooling them. So they're all homeschooled, all 4, and always have been, because I feel they're the first line of defense in who I should mentor in this world. But as I continued to go through that and realized, there are these opportunities to succeed and fail, I launched my first campaigns. And after the 300 campaign failures, okay, the 301st campaign, marketing online campaign, actually worked. It worked. And it was like $50 a day in profit. And I'm like it just clicked. The action, the belief, the tenacity, the willingness to just keep pushing hard and hard. If I'd stopped at 250, I wouldn't have reached it. 299 wouldn't have got there. By the time that happened, I had kind of figured out exactly who I was selling to. And the last component of that really gets down to most business owners do not fully understand who they're actually selling to. They do not own very detailed wise down to the 47-year-old housewife living in Texas who has 3 kids and loves barbecue. They don't specifically know who they're actually selling to. They try to sell all things to all people, and you're not Amazon. Okay. If you can get down into the niche of simply selling one widget to one avatar and find more of that avatar, your limiting beliefs will go away when you suddenly realize there's millions of those people you can sell to. There's billion people across the world you can probably reach for a specific kind of product. You just haven't focused down into that particular area. You don't know who your avatar is. And by the time I got to my 300th campaign, I suddenly realized that was my problem. It wasn't the mechanics, it wasn't the mechanism, it wasn't pushing the button. And I think, again, many business owners get caught in that tactical and tactile response without actually thinking about what they should be doing. And I suddenly realized who I was selling to. And in this case, it was guys in South Africa who were wanting to install a dating app. And then when I realized exactly who they were, I started to do more of that. And pretty soon it was 100 and then 500 and then $1,000 a day in profit. I just focused in, and every campaign after that was successful and created more success as I continued to just move along the chain. I sold them more basically of the same thing. And we do that in the physical product world. Once we dial into a particular product and we know that avatar, who they are, why they're buying this product, and there's 20 million of them a year searching for this product specifically, I want to go attack 1% of that market share. And with that focus, it is hyper relevancy from the customer through the product, through the listing, to the images, down to the price point, hyper relevancy. And that creates expansion, right? Those products can take off extremely fast. Relevancy, focus, intent, and just a willing, stupid perseverance to say, if it isn't hell no, then it's KNOW. If it's an NO, it's still not a hello. So hell no. So I'm going to keep going.
I love this. Now you have a book.
I do.
Would love to talk just a little bit about the book as we're wrapping things up here.
Yeah.
So give us the overview.
In simple terms, it's a conversational format book, which is some people's heads kind of explode a little bit, but it is a strategy guide spent out of my podcast called the High Voltage Business Builders Podcast. And in there, I interviewed a number of experts in the area of online e-commerce, lead generation, consulting, and physical products, as well as financing and wealth without Wall Street strategies that were incorporated. And those 15 chapters were built into that based on those podcasts. And each of them cover my 4 big breaks that all sellers need to make if they're going to build a physical product business. It's called Almost Automated Income with FBA. And it focuses on starting with the FBA channel first to attract basically eyeballs on the offer. Sales fixes everything, as we say. So we need to find people to buy our product, and Amazon is a juggernaut of buying and machines. And if you can sell on that platform, you can pretty much sell on every other platform. So we go through that process and explain it with strategy, case studies, and resources that support each of those things to help people understand what those steps are, to really get down to the strategy of the business, marketing, and fundamentals of business and profitability. And then that will lead them into hopefully implementation and tactical efforts to get it done.
Now you've got a little gift for some of our listeners.
Sure. Yeah. If you guys, for the 10 of you who's still listening to me, who haven't already hung up the call, you can go over to voltagedm.com/free book. And for 10 of you right now, with a code that'll be below this video, you can opt in and grab a free copy of that book. Everybody else who doesn't get that in time, sorry, you'll have to pay the fee. It's only $5 for the digital copy. There's a physical copy on Amazon if you want to grab a paperback copy as well.
Awesome. Love it. All right, Neil, this has been a power-packed episode. How can our listeners go deeper with you? How can they connect with you and learn more?
Well, Voltage DM, voltagedigitalmarketing.com. We are both a holding company, an acquisition company, and an exit company in the physical products space. So if you have any interest or sell physical products and want to get into the online world, if you're aspiring to do that as an entrepreneur, or maybe you're a current entrepreneur who wants to learn more about that, that's what we do. And there's a presentation there for you to check out. There are virtual summits that go detail into that, as well as podcasts that you can check out and listen to understand more about our, as we call our as seen on TV strategy, which is where I developed my first product, watching an infomercial at 4 a.m. with my third daughter while she was feeding milk. I discovered our first product that turned into our first 7-figure brand. And I talk about that as well in those trainings, and you're welcome to check that out or follow me anywhere else online. Its last name is Twa. You can't miss me. I'm all across social media.
So great. Thank you so much, Neil. Love the insights. Love the matter of fact, let's not sugarcoat it approach that you take to business.
Thank you. That's
And
very
of
kind of you.
course, got to thank all of our listeners, those of you who
Absolutely.
have hung out with us this whole time. Um, you know we're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we'll see you in the next episode.